Patreon-sponsored review time again, this time from Jim Bevan, who requested I review this series. For those newer around here, in 2017, I took a look at the Lupin III live-action movies, the original from the 70s and the newer 2014 one, as part of my Tokusatsu review series, since at the time I rolled in live-action adaptations of games, manga, and anime into that production, which is now defunct due to copyright claims abuse. Both films styled themselves after telling the origin story of the titular Arsene Lupin III, and his eclectic cast of characters and how they met and began their games of heists, followed by cops and robbers' antics. A story for the series that I don't feel is required. This request obviously continues from that, with the second animated entry exploring the same, with the first being the early 2000s movie First Contact that, honestly, I'm considering doing as well to just wrap these and contrast all the differing executions, and talk about that movie's writer and how his career went to crap. Still, The Woman Called Fujiko Mine is actually a pretty important series, since on top of it placing primary focus on Lupin's leading lady and conniving con artist love interest in the greatest exploration of her character Fujiko has ever gotten, it was the first Lupin anime TV series in a couple decades. The previous TV series, Lupin III Part 3, aka the Pink Jacket series, aired in 1984 and 85, whereas this series aired in 2012. The only content filling the interim 27 years being the annual films and TV specials, which fill out the grand majority of most people's awareness of the franchise. The series did well, and jump-started a boom in interest in the property that outside of the specials had stagnated, leading to the greenlighting of the excellent Lupin Part 4 written by Commodore X8 and Kamen Rider 01 writer Yu Takahashi, and the 50th anniversary series Part 5 that I actually still have to see as I'm waiting for the Blu-ray release. And if the Blu-ray is already out by the time I release this video, just know I wrote and recorded this in late 2019. Remember kids, smart reviewers trying to produce videos around their busy lives do their best to create a content buffer so real life has less of a chance of screwing them over. Which thus led to this series actually having a number of spin-off sequel films / OVAs. 2014's Jigen's Gravestone, 2017's Goemon Ishikawa's Blood Spray, and 2019's Fujiko Mine's Lie, all of which once more written by Yuya Takahashi. I seem to really like a lot of work by that guy. But yeah, this series was pretty damn well received, all things considered, and it took me about half a year after the request was made to get a copy of it for a price that wasn't completely insane. The series was licensed and dubbed by Funimation, but they lost the license to everything Lupin related to Discotek Media, who has since been doing the work in filling out the Lupin backlog of content that Funimation spent literal years neglecting, and that neglect being why they lost the license. Because of that, the Blu-ray and DVD copies of this series were long out of print, and it's actually impossible to find the dub or sub through less legal means. I'm honestly hoping Discotek can re-release it in the future, as they have been releasing the related OVAs for it more recently. The series was written by Mari Okada, a regular series composer for a variety of anime adaptations of manga, Basilisk, Vampire Knight, and Black Butler to name a few, but whose most notable original work being Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans, which I know a lot of people really like and have had it recommended to me, but I've not actually seen it yet. I know, considering my Gunpla collection that I've not. It's on my list. I initially passed it as the premise wasn't the most appealing to me at the time, but I promised to give it a shot later after the series had concluded. It's in my backlog. Itsugo Miyoshi, who has no other production credits I can find, Dai Sato, who has contributed scripts to Cowboy Bebop, Wolf's Rain, Samurai Champloo, and Ghost in the Shell, including the writing of the video game. I have actually yet to play this, I just found it at a clearance event years ago and grabbed it because it's really rare. Shinsuke Onishi, who I've previously discussed as he was the series composer to the 2000 Cyborg 009 and then the 0091 anime I have previously mentioned. And if you've not yet, buy the Blu-ray release of that one. Discotek put an insane amount of effort to recover the complete series dub, which had been left in a moldy box by Cartoon Network for the better part of 15 years, when the DVDs of it could have actually seen distribution all that time, but hadn't because the importers and distributors for it were all assholes. And Junji Nishimura, an anime writer-director that's a point of commonality between the three, with careers in the industry as having worked with them on some of their notable projects like Basilisk and Ghost in the Shell, but is most infamous as serving as an animation director for the series God Mars, and the anime adaptations of Rumiko Takahashi's manga, Urusei Yatsura, and Ranma 1/2. On directing duty, we have Sayo Yamamoto, the first female anime director for a Lupin property with this project, and has worked as both a director and storyboard artist on several projects with these same writers as well. Particularly Once More Samurai Champloo, as well as Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt, and Death Note. Whereas character designs and animation direction came from Takeshi Koike, who was once more an industry long runner with his credits dating back to the 1980s. But I most know him for the key animation of the Cardcaptor Sakura movies and Trigun Badlands Rumble. Oh look, a bunch of people with notable careers and history of making good content when their efforts are not being screwed with made a critically acclaimed series. What a shock. Okay, that didn't mean to sound mean-spirited or sarcastic, but I've just got a list of series I'm a fan of, which in the last several years ended up having entries in them which were garbage due to asshole producers, or garbage writers wasting the potential of ideas presented with their wholesale ripping off of others' work because of their own lack of competence or understanding that it's not even funny. To revisit coverage of a franchise I enjoy just casually, and when looking into the production details of an entry in it, find it succeed because the creative staff were allowed to do their jobs unimpeded by spaghetti jackassery, is quite frankly refreshing, and what is needed more of. Though while it's not consistent with much of this group's past work, particularly Koike's, the art style of this series is done in this digitally sketchy style, with shadows all depicted with striations of sketching lines, as if it were hand-drawn then filled in with watercolors. It makes the series have a really distinct feel, as I don't see this means of production very often, the most I've seen of it being in some of the art for the Garo franchise, or what was used intermittently for the Witches' realms in Madoka Magica. I just don't see this aesthetic very often, and the limited encounters with it I have makes me honestly appreciate it all the more the times I do see it. While some people feel like it is an unprofessional look, I quite enjoy it as it makes it feel like everything is drawn with raw emotion and thought-given form. You can still cleanly make out everything and everyone, but unlike animation errors and odd artistic mistakes, this feels like someone pulled this out of an older comic book when everything was still done with pencils instead of modern digital art. Or rather, someone colored it in an old animated music video. We open the series on Arsene Lupin III, infiltrating a cult holding a wedding ceremony between one of the cult heads and, as you could guess, Fujiko Mine, who's aimed her first con of the series at stealing the valuables of this ultra-rich cult in advance of Lupin's actions to sue Chaos and Anarchy for his own infiltration. This resultantly is presented as their first meeting, with her pointing a gun in his face as they're both trapped by the cultist who anticipated their antics.
So the cult leader's beautiful bride is really a thief. What an unexpected turn of events.
She's of course heard of him in turn, but only as a solo act who somehow always gets what he's after. And in turn, he's heard of her, which surprises her as, at this point, she's still relatively small-time and stealthy in her escapades. Ergo, like she's usually presented in the main media of the franchise, she's a stealth and infiltration specialist with charisma as her dump stat. Both are in this place to rip off the head of the cult, who uses some type of spore he bathes his body in to make everyone around him euphorically trip balls and entrance them into enriching himself. Fujiko intending to kidnap the man himself for the secret of his dust, but that got screwed over by Lupin trying to steal the other valuables of the place. But with them both trapped, Lupin's interested in a little competition with his newest thieving associate for making their escape, to which in response he's admittedly seduced.
You have anything in your bag of tricks other than seduction? Something that would make you a worthy opponent?
What if you're right, and I am a one-trick pony?
Oh, my poor virgin eyes!
Perhaps we could join forces instead, until I find an opportune moment to double-cross you.
Their entire relationship, summarized down to a couple statements. Yeah, people say Fujiko doesn't have a lot of tricks up her sleeve, but you have to admit, the one she makes the most use of, she utilizes expertly to play and con literally everyone around her for her own gain and to get her out of trouble. This series, though, obviously takes that a bit more graphically by the censoring I have to do here. Taking the sexual elements that have always been part of her character, but downplayed for a general audience's acceptance, and ramping them up to 11 and shoving them into the forefront. Again, the character's use of weaponized sexuality and seduction have always been a part of how Fujiko plays things, Even both live-action film adaptations got that right, even if it was presented differently, but it's never been that brazen as it is here. To the point I've ended up censoring a lot of the footage I'm using to get it past YouTube's crap. You want to see it for yourself? Find the home release. Good luck with that. With her using such to both separate herself from Lupin, and then seduce a guard so she can swap herself out of being executed by the cult.
Thieving is more fun as a competitive sport. Right, Lupin?
And yet, when the chips are down, and when she can't seduce him, he can one-up her every time with how he thinks faster and at odd angles to everyone else around him. And as Fujiko once more goes after seduction as her way in claiming the cult head's drug formula, Lupin finds his own way into the facility's vault. After a short gunfight, revealing he announced his attempt at the theft to his eternal pursuer Koichi Zenigata, which gave the detective the excuse needed to invade the island himself for long-suspected narcotics dealings, thus ending the cult head's own plans at world domination through enslavement to his drug. Once again gelling with my perception of Lupin being a thief with a heart of gold and stealing from the uber-rich and corrupting influences of the world, with his pursuers then bagging his interim antagonist instead of him as their own reward for playing their part in his escapades. Something, of course, he would never admit. But both of them trying to one-up each other and attempting to steal the statue the man has made out of his crystallized drug leads to it falling into the sea, dissolving the crystal compound and leaving neither with the prize. The only remnant of their encounter in the end being Fujiko finding a note on her inner thigh. Lupin announcing that a woman like her, he can't live without.
Fujiko Mine, a mighty fine lady who just might cure me of my boredom.
And thus begins their game of cat and also cat, as Lupin starts his attempts to try and claim the love of the most interesting woman in the world, which of course sets the stage for the series beautifully, and also explains why they never actually do get together when so many times throughout the franchise, coupling with him more permanently would benefit them both. After all, if Lupin ever received acknowledgement that he'd won her over, then the game between them would be over. An aspect of the relationship that before this had never actually been said or addressed, or really even explored. Yeah, that part of things was entirely missing in both live-action films. In Strange Psychokinetic Strategy, she was just using him via his sudden affection for her, reflective of the most shallow of readings one could have of their game. The 2014 film took the angle of them as equals, but coming from the same place and sphere of influence where seducing him and other men was the only way she had of one-upping him because she was his weakness. And that version of Lupin genuinely, altruistically loved her. Here, though, this showed them as disparate thieves meeting by chance and using everything in their arsenal to their advantage. But on first meeting, Fujiko doesn't realize the difference in their skills, thus leaving her with few advantages over him, which she then relies to deal with him in the future as she more and more then has his number to take the initiative from him. With the advance notice also giving an explanation to the many times where Fujiko did openly outdo him, just all being part of his ongoing and outstanding challenge to eventually win her heart. Again, it's why this works better as an origin story than the live-action films, as the story keeps its focus on that admits the plots everyone becomes involved in, versus the origin and the heist of the event being divided instead of interwoven. The second heist sends us to a casino, where Fujiko is cleaning house with assistance of radio transceivers in her earrings that leads to the casino owners trying to wreck her with the impossible to resist to a thief wager of the entire casino. Man, talk about breaking the bank.
Unfortunately, I don't have anything of equal value to put up.
You do, though. Bet your lovely self.
Because, damn it, everything is gay about this?
And intriguing. Count me in.
Of course, Fujiko just does not know when to stop. And resultantly, she loses as they jam her jammers, leading to the owner offering her her freedom in exchange for two tasks. Steal Daisuke Jigen's gun, and not screw them on the first request. She wants the gun as Jigen was publicly said to be responsible for betraying and killing her husband. And while the woman's come into great power from both the casino and the underhanded dealings the casino was a front for, because of it she lost someone she truly cared for and valued. Thus the assassin losing something in return for the slight, she'd kill for that. Especially since Jigen values his .357 Magnum as if it were family. And if it were taken, he'd walk through the doors to his death to get it back. And as Jigen does not kill women as a point of honor in his conduct, like Lupin, Fujiko is his worst sort of enemy. Fujiko's way in is through posing as a woman auditioning to be the newest mistress to an enemy mob boss, who Jigen is currently working for. Because of course Fujiko's huge infiltration skills would be of use here.
Babysitting little girls isn't part of my job description, sorry.
You know, I've got nothing against the Discotheque Media dub cast, especially since Richard Epcar is awesome, but I missed Christopher Sabat voicing Jigen. I feel he does the voice better, since I'm so used to Epcar as Denagata, and thus it feels weird for Epcar to voice Jigen in the Discotheque dubs, as I'm so used to him being Lupin's foil, not main partner in crime. Plus, I feel Sabat does a better tired drawl for Jigen that fits his detective noir character as an old steady hand in the criminal underworld, even though Sabat now also uses that voice for Withered All Might in My Hero Academia. She tries to seduce him, but fails outright because, well, Jigen's not interested.
Loyal to the boss? Or are you just spineless?
Neither. I just hate women.
This specific line seems off, as Jigen has had romantic interactions with women in the past. He just has a terrible track record with them either being terrible or betraying him, or them dying tragically. Well, yeah, throughout Lupin's media, he is the first to distrust Fujiko anytime she gets involved. It's usually because of an existing track record of double-crosses. This, though, is their first meeting, at least according to this series' canon, so he should only really think of her as a loose woman and not automatically be this cold and antagonistic. Hell, the episode following this explores that.
The boss has got more than his fair share of enemies, including some who would play mistress just to get close to him.
So yeah, Jigen has a well-worn sense of paranoia that's explored here, with Fujiko trying to figure out why he betrayed the other sect to come here, in order to play the angles to get out of her own situation. That in turn is revealed to be connected to Fujiko's contractor, who in the past when Jigen worked for her husband, was so depressed with her existence as his trophy wife, she tried to kill herself. Why she was suicidal is not explained, but Jigen got too close to her as her husband instructed him to be her personal bodyguard, eventually cheating on her husband with him. Something she came to regret when their affair led to the events that caused her husband's death, when she shot him. Fujiko managed to drug Jigen and steal his gun, turning it over to her contractor, leading to a confrontation in a church.
What you stole from me was more than just some gun. It was my past. It was my life.
Where it's revealed that even the whole affair with Jigen was a ploy to usurp her husband with her actual lover, and Jigen's the only one who had the evidence to reveal their plot. But really, this feels kind of dumb. After all, if Jigen was keeping this secret to protect someone he was manipulating into falling for, wouldn't just her keeping quiet prevent any suspicion? Instead now, you force Jigen into a confrontation where their little deception is being exposed. Then again, it is a consistent thing with Lupin antagonists and their plans that they don't have any idea what they're going to do once they get their goals through their plans. But no, this time there was a plan within a plan. Her husband's been in her newest affair she wanted to be rid of, alongside setting up a situation where she would finally lose her life.
I felt like an empty shell ever since I lost you. I didn't know what to do. If I was going to die, I wanted you to be the one to kill me.
With this, Fujiko's free, while Jigen decides to retire from being a hired gun for the mob, sick of the endless back-and-forth killings from organized crime. Maybe he can find some thrills joining up with some thieves instead. The third episode is where Goemon Ishikawa the 13th makes his appearance. Late, as always. Seriously, every time there's an origin story, it feels like Goemon's kind of just shoved to the side. As Fujiko attempts to steal the riches from a well-off family by posing as the tutor and caretaker for a royal family's little kids as they all travel by train. Goemon and Fujiko's paths intersect as the swordsman is contracted to kill the kid's grandfather, a man named Trunk, and things go awry as the kid's uncle is plotting this all as a political assassination to gain the throne instead of the kid since he already succeeded in offing their parents. Goemon is their obvious fall guy for all of this over them, but their plan backfires as Goemon ends up encountering and entertaining the kids with his own antics.
Bunny!
Yes, it is a rabbit. Children like rabbits. I know these things because I am a traveling entertainer. Goemon Ishikawa. Best not to look. Once more, I have cut a worthless object.
And amidst this, Fujiko and Goemon have some chances to talk. A surprising thing because normally Goemon and Fujiko are the members of the Lupin cast who interact the least, and bond somewhat over how Goemon is a man who is out of place in time as a samurai in the modern day, whereas similarly Fujiko just can't find anywhere that truly feels like home, both wandering and taking what they want and need through use of their skills, and hoping to find and come to own just that place to belong. So as things begin to go wrong and another hired assassin sabotages the train to send it off the rails to crash and kill everyone aboard, Goemon gives up his assignment as he feels a duty to protect the kids and other innocents on board. Well, that and there's a non-compete and betrayal clause in his contracts. Fortunately, Goemon can cut the train line so the manual brakes can save all the passengers, but the treasures the family Fujiko was after are lost, as the cargo car is too heavy for the emergency brakes to be able to handle, with the only thing she's able to take in the end being the king's belt, which in and of itself is a rare relic. But of course, there's something else of the regular cast who Fujiko is yet to charm, with Fujiko ending up captured in some other escapade and using her talents to get off from Zenigata, before he offers her a way out of jail. Protect an opera singer's valuable mask from Lupin, who has already sent out one of his notices of his intent to steal it and its jewel-encrusted majesty.
Ion is a soprano dramatico dodgelita, but a tragic accident left most of her face burned beyond recognition.
I heard some obsessed fan went crazy and attacked her.
After it happened, she began wearing a mask on stage for all of her performances. Supposedly, the mask was given to her as a courtship present from a ghost haunting the Palais Garnier.
Oh, we're going full-on Phantom of the Opera on this one. This actually sounds like a really interesting twist on that classic tale. Why has no one done anything like this before? Hell, now that I think on it, the last two tales have also had significant literary influences on them as well, or at least bear similarities to ones I have seen before. Jigen's tale mimics ones you can find in quite a number of gangster and detective noir tales, and while I can't place the specific story, I swear I've read or seen a tale similar to Goemon's take place before. The closest equivalent I can put my finger on being a filler episode from the Rurouni Kenshin anime where, well, Kenshin was on a train and interfered when it attempted to be robbed. Not that I'm calling them rip-offs or anything, just it's amusingly similar to once more see such literary influences in the Lupin media, considering the franchise's origins as, well, basically generational fanfiction of a French writer's work. After all, the distinction between an homage or allusion to another's work and a wholesale rip-off is how heavily the lead or repetition took from the earlier's tale. If you're just repeating everything with no tangible original ideas or differences, congratulations! You're a predictable and derivative ripoff! If you're telling new stories that just happen to go through similar motions as another's works and might have taken inspiration from them, well, that's just more reference fun for those of us who look for such things. Hell, to further the Phantom of the Opera parallels on this one, the palace the performance theater is set in has a wealth of catacombs running under it in the same manner as you find in most adaptations of the Phantom story. Well, except for the Phantom of the Telethon. Fujiko's placed undercover as a performer in the opera to help in weeding out Lupin, the gentleman thief, instead of attempting to claim his prize, instead first ambushing Fujiko to see what's up, only for his own antics to be confused with the ghost of the opera's staking of claims on Ion. The threat causes them to swap Fujiko in as a body double for Ion, as Zenigata is under the impression the ghost and Lupin are one and the same. They attempt to set up a trap with the theater's trap doors to lure Lupin in, but the ghost's obsession with Ayan instead trips it early. It revealed the ghost is in fact the stage manager of the play, who is himself attempting to capture Lupin to protect Ayan, as the two are lovers hiding away from the world under the theater. As you'd expect from a Phantom adaptation, a chase ensues into the catacombs over the ghost, Lupin, and the mask, with the two's relationship exposed to Fujiko, and the deception to allow a prop worker with true talent as a singer succeed her as the next Ayan. They destroy the mask, losing any need for them to be chased any longer. Fujiko freed as, obviously, Lupin never obtained his prize. But Lupin's attempts to win over Fujiko have once more been enticed by this latest encounter, him coming to her later with Alexandrite stone flowers. But Fujiko's not so easily swayed, offering him a chance to win their game with word of a newly publicly discovered pyramid in Egypt with riches to plunder. In particular, a pendant designed after a peacock.
Okay, this for some reason raised flags with me, so I checked and peacocks? While they're not native to the Egyptian regions as they're only natively found in India, their distinctive plumage made them an attraction for the wealthy and royal. Thus, the species saw export to most early world nations as a status symbol of power and immortality, then present in Greek, Roman, Persian, and so on cultures dating back millennia. Stuff like that is kind of funny.
But this intersects well with Jigen, who's broke and trying his luck as a thief with trying to gain treasure from that pyramid as well, after failing under sway of an old-time tale of the judging of one's sins to be the feather of Mont, which leads to him having his meager possessions stolen. It results in Jigen and Lupin's first meeting, surprisingly at odds with each other considering their following camaraderie, as they both pop the traps of the place through their antics.
It's certainly something different to see, considering most media portray Jigen as Lupin's near-ever-present right-hand man from the beginning of their meetings and encounters, and a refreshing one at that. Once more, in both live-action movies, Lupin just inherits Jigen's loyalty from another source, be it the crime family Lupin is the willful inheritor to, or the favorite of Jigen's prior boss who joins up with him after they're gone. But this honestly feels more natural in Lupin having to, well, earn Jigen's respect to in turn steal for himself the gunman's loyalty.
And here he does that through, after they both burn their first rounds of bullets, Lupin planting explosive rounds on Jigen's body and allows him to go through the traps in advance, simultaneously setting off the traps to allow them both to proceed freely and saving Jigen's life by providing the defense from them. But regardless of that, the traps aren't the only thing preventing them from getting the treasure. For in the room with the prize is a lock made up of another set of scales of Mont, where all a man's sins in their life are judged.
They're sinners down to the core, obviously. So what is there to be afraid of? Why would even if you're rewarded with rebirth, there's no guarantee your new life is going to be a good one.
Doesn't matter.
Of course, the trick of the scales is how you place the rate representing one's sins on the scale. If you drop it, of course you're going to be judged unfairly. But of course, the entire thing is another disguised trap, snaring them while Fujiko swaggers in after them, as well to seal it for herself, as the peacock is locked behind a sacrificial altar that expects blood to be given, and the pair of them are the sacrifice. Jigen and Lupin, of course, arguing over which one it's going to be, with Jigen showing his expected exasperation over Lupin's affection towards Fujiko.
She does us go around spreading trouble.
If there's no trouble, it's not worth stealing. That's the code of the Lupin family.
Lupin.
However, the pair find a way out of the trap by sending in sacrifice instead a mass of scorpions which nested inside a mummy in the trap, dyeing the peacock's feathers blue, and releasing the lock to the Alexandrite figure. The three escape the final traps of the pyramid, but the way outside is also locked by a stone that requires the figure be set inside of it, making it so none of them can take the prize by the tail's end. Next, Fujiko infiltrates an all-girls school as a teacher in order to get close to Isolde Brock, the sheltered, shut-in daughter of a recently deceased scientist, in hopes of stealing from them her father's research for resale on the black market, and assisted in those attempts because, well, damn it, everything is gay about this. And Fujiko didn't even need to turn on the charm this time.
Is that a jab at the propensity of that popping up at gender-segregated boarding schools?
The attention Isolde is showed in by Fujiko leads her to be bullied by the other girls, also seeking Fujiko's attention, leading her to seek comfort in Fujiko's arms all the more. However, it's all a ruse. Isolde has secretly been replaced by Zenigata's assistant in this series, the androgynous Lieutenant Oscar, the character himself being an allusion to the shoujo manga The Rose of Versailles.
Oscar has been appearing alongside Zenigata for much of the series, but has had no tangible role in the story up to this point, at most just appearing for one or two snarky lines or insults aimed at Lupin and his thieving associates, or otherwise flirting with Zenigata, whom Oscar sexually desires, to Zenigata's own discomfort.
Oscar set up their entire deception himself after learning through Interpol's agents that Fujiko had been looking into Dr. Brock's work, and found his final thesis was incomplete without a missing half of his data, believed to be in the daughter's hands. So while she was placed in protective custody, Oscar went out as bait and lured Fujiko straight in. And with her in custody, she in turn makes for bait in Oscar's pointless attempts to gain Zenigata's affections through the capture of Lupin. However, here we begin to see more of the story arc for the series take focus. For amidst her capture, we see an odd owl watching over Fujiko, as she begins to have tortured dreams of a smashed home and family, and some force tormenting her beyond sight.
Did the Court of Owls choose a new target to stalk outside of Batman? What the hell?
Sure enough, Lupin falls for Oscar's ruse, with the other students that previously tormented Oscar as Isolde assisting him, as Oscar has likewise used the same seduction talents Fujiko makes use of on them to make them all his pretty little minions. A twist I did not see coming due to how the prior scenes were framed. It's also surprising with Oscar's own infatuation that they could pull such off convincingly.
But in the end, aren't we all just living in a prison of love? You know, because that's the title of the episode.
Yeah, no, Lupin saw this coming, and freed Fujiko earlier so she could escape with all the info needed with the scientist's data. Lupin's actions all a distraction to keep Oscar occupied, until she could prepare another deception of her recording herself torturing Zenigata, so she could get the code from him to get past his own deterrence, leaving Oscar with nothing to show for his efforts, and the thieving pair for once splitting the profits of their scheme. A rare time we see that happen between them. Then, a Central American nation called Carib ends up having a complete revolution, a new leader seizing power.
And this episode already feels a bit uncomfortable considering the shifts in power that actually have taken place the last few years, which mimics this a bit too closely.
With Fujiko in turn getting close to the glorious new leader, Fidel Kest, as part of a spy operation for the world government trying to hopefully diffuse tensions in the area. Goemon gets involved by being hired into the same ring to assassinate Kest, as his group's other enemies begin to move against him, the America XP sending in their own assassination unit, an ousted government official beginning to plan for the launch of nuclear weapons, which would resultantly be blamed on Kest, who himself is something of an idealist within his revolution and upset the expected balance of power.
Now, whether Kest is a good or bad man in all of this is not the most distinctly presented, it more hinging on the idea that a sudden shift in revolution in the current world order is pushed back against by the establishment in order for them to reassert their presumed world order or take advantage of such for only their own greed or benefit, something we've suffered with once again the last few years both in the micro and macro scale. The American XP's president in this story, of course, being a stand-in for Ronald Reagan, considering how badly the Reagan administration screwed over Central America, to the point that North, South, and Central America are all currently still feeling the socio-political impacts of what that administration screwed over in the form of mass immigrations out of those regions to safer lands because the puppet government set up in that time going corrupt. I'm not kidding on this, actually look it up.
And, of course, the world's economy hinges on non-renewable resources. The old government lackeys and their Russia XP allies, the US XPs and Fujiko, all after the government's secret hidden oil fields they want to claim for themselves, alongside being able to build their own missile bases there to discourage military chaos. None of which Kest wants. He just wants them all out.
The test between superpowers will end eventually. And in time, the scars of war burned into our land will fade as well. I just want to dance. To my own beat. That's all.
We can dance if we want to. We can leave your friends behind. 'Cause your friends don't dance, and if they don't dance, well, they're no friends of mine.
Thus, Kest gives up the secret he's been hiding to Fujiko, having figured her as a spy from the beginning, But better the enemy you know that stands before you and will just let you be than the one who seeks to hide and stab you in the back, right? But in a moment of sheer ludicrousness, Goemon comes up on a plane piloted by Lupin and cuts the missiles that would have started World War III in twain, saving a lot of them and allowing Kess to address the UN, the assassination plot ending in complete failure, because sometimes the status quo should not be God. Even Fujiko doesn't get what she wants here, though, as the oil fields rumored to exist in the country are underneath and would entirely ruin the tourist industry of the country by smashing to pieces their precious beaches.
And what would be better for a country on the brink? Foreign money brought in through trade and tourism, or the land plundered over and over just to benefit a few, which might just drive them back into chaos again? These are deep questions.